Okay, this is our quadratic formula notes. We have x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Where do we get those letters from? We get it from the general form of the quadratic. A always comes in front of x squared, b is always in front of x, and c is always the constant. Notice that all of our equations should equal 0. So if I move over, I'm going to label A. A is equal to 1, B is equal to 5, and C is equal to negative 8. And then I'm going to plug those into the formula. X equals negative B, which would be negative 5, plus or minus the square root of B squared, which is 5 squared, minus 4, times 1, which is A, times negative 8, which is C, all over 2A, which is 1. Now, I want to go ahead and I want to evaluate this part first. This is called the discriminant. And I want to evaluate that part first in the calculator because that gives me some information. So I'm going to take 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8 into the calculator and hit enter, and I get 57. So when I simplify this, I get x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 57 all over, and then I'm going to simplify 2 times 1, 2. Now this 57 tells me how many solutions I'm going to have. It tells me I'm going to have 2 solutions. This is what we call our exact answer. This is the exact answer because square root of 57 can't be simplified any further at this point. But we're also going to have approximate answers. And we are going to evaluate that out and calculate the approximate values. Okay, so with this in the calculator, I'm going to evaluate my numerator. So I'm going to have negative 5 plus, even though it says plus or minus, I can only do plus first because I can't evaluate them both at the same time. So square root of 57, and that's my numerator, so I'm going to go ahead and evaluate that, and then I need to divide that by 2. So my first approximate answer is 1.2, and I didn't see if I had to round it or not. Nope, 2.7. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm going to do the minus. So I'm going to have negative 5 minus square root of 57, this is my numerator, and I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to divide that by my denominator, 2. And I get an approximate negative 6.27. So these would be my approximate answers. This is where the parabola would touch the x-axis at 1.27 and negative 6.27. So you may have approximate answers that you're looking at, and you may have exact answers. This would be the exact answer. Okay? Discriminant information. The discriminant is going to be the b squared minus 4ac part. And if b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, then there are 2 real solutions. If b squared minus 4ac equals 0, then there's 1 real solution. And if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, then there is no real solution. Okay, that's why we want to go ahead and evaluate that first in our quadratic formula. That way we know how many answers to expect. Okay, going up. Okay, number 8, A is equal to 1, B is equal to 4, C is equal to 1. So now I'm going to plug it in. X equals negative B, negative 4, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. And I'm going to evaluate my B squared minus 4AC first. So I'm going to take 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1, and I get 12. So that 12 tells me that I have two solutions that I'm looking for. Okay, this is going to be our exact answer. And now I'm going to find my approximate answers. I'm going to put those into the calculator. So I'm going to do negative 4 plus square root of 12 first. There's my numerator. I'm going to divide by 2. So I get negative 2.7. I'm going to round to 2 decimal places. Negative 0.27. Now I'm going to come back and do the negative. So I'm going to do negative 4 minus square root of 12, and that's my numerator, and divide that by 2, and we get negative 3.73. So these are my approximate answers. Okay, this is my exact answer, this is my approximate answer. Number 9, A is equal to 4, B is equal to negative 1, C is equal to negative 20. So X equals negative B. With B is already negative, then the opposite of negative would be positive, so we just change the sign. Plus or minus square root of negative 1 squared. Yes, I put the negative in parentheses for the calculator to calculate it correctly. 4 times 4 times negative 20, all over 2 times 4. Okay, so I'm going to evaluate that discriminant part first. So that's going to be, and I'm going to show you, if I just do negative 1 squared, I get negative 1. That's not correct. We know whenever we square a negative number, it should be positive. So, in order to correct that, you need to put the negative 1 in parentheses. Any negative number being squared needs to be in parentheses. The calculator separates the negative sign from the 1 and squares the 1 and then applies the negative. Negative 1 squared is not negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So if you don't put the sign in parentheses, then you're going to get it incorrect. Okay, so I have negative 1 squared minus 4 times 4 times negative 20. And I get 321, so I get 1 plus or minus the square root of 321 all over 4 times 2 is 8. So again, this is my exact solution, and then I'm going to go back and find my approximate solutions. I'm going to take 1 plus square root of 321, enter, that's my numerator, divide it by 8. And I get 2.36. So 2.36 is one of my solutions. And I'm going to do 1 minus square root of 321. That's my numerator. And I'm going to divide by 8, my denominator. And it goes through at negative 2.11. Again, I'm rounding to 2 decimal places. Okay, so this is my approximate answer. That's where my parabola touches my x-axis. Okay, number 10, A is equal to negative 1, B is equal to 1, C is equal to 12. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 12 all over 2 times negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to evaluate the discriminant part. And I'm going to take 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 12. And I don't have to put the parentheses around the positive numbers. The positive numbers evaluate correctly. And I get 49. So I get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 49 over negative 2. Normally this would be our exact answer. However, 49 is a perfect square. So if I take the square root of 49, I get 7. So that simplifies even further. So I get x equals negative 1 plus or minus 7 over negative 2. Okay, so I'm not really going to have an approximate answer because this one simplifies to a perfect square. Now I'm going to separate them, and I'm going to do negative 1 plus 7 divided by 2, and I'm going to do negative 1 minus 7 divided by negative 2. This one gives me a positive 6 over negative 2, and this one gives me a negative 8 over negative 2. I'm going to come over here to the side. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3, and negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. So my solutions are negative 3 and 4. So this one did come out to a nice, neat whole number. Number 11, A is equal to 10, B is equal to negative 7, C equals 5. So x equals negative b. B is already negative, so that's going to make it positive 7, plus or minus the square root of, parentheses again because it's negative, negative 7 squared minus 4 times 10 times 5 all over 2 times 10. So I'm going to perform the discriminant. And I'm going to have parenthesis negative 7 squared minus 4 times 10 times 5, and I see that it's negative. So I get 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 151 over 20. Well, I can stop right there because when I see a negative inside the parentheses, I know I have no solution. And even if you try to put it in your calculator, put the square root of negative 151 in your calculator and hit enter, it will tell you it is a non-real answer. That's telling you there's no real solution. So I already know by having a negative in the square root that there is no solution. Okay? Number 12. A is equal to 49, B is equal to 28, C is equal to 4. X is equal to negative b, so that's negative 28, plus or minus the square root. We're going to have 28 squared, and I put parentheses, I didn't have to. 28 squared minus 4 times 49 times 4 all over 2 times 49. So I'm going to perform the discriminant. So that's going to give me 28 squared minus 4 times 49 times 4. And I get 0. So negative 28 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 98. Well, this is still 0, so that goes away. So I have one solution. Remember, when it equaled 0, I had one solution. It's negative 28 over 98. Well, I'm going to simplify that down. And I'm just going to use my calculator. Negative 28 over 98. I'm going to hit enter, and I get that decimal. Well, I can always change it back to a fraction by hitting math, 1 fraction. So that simplifies down into negative 2/7, and negative 2/7 would be my final answer. Okay, here's how you work the quadratic formula.